Welcome to A Journey on My Mind. I'm here with three of my closest friends as we sit around this table and discuss some of the greater complex things of life that include the mind and the spirit and the soul. And thank you for joining me today, Sam.
Yeah, glad to be here, buddy.
Suzie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Dave.
Good to be here.
Suzie sitting in for Lauren today.
Big shoes to fill.
Big shoes.
Yeah.
And we are in the middle of a snow apocalypse here in Tennessee. Whenever it snows, it's a snow apocalypse. But
whenever it rains too much,
yes,
it's an apocalypse.
But this has been a few days. Dave, you said you haven't been out of your place since Sunday?
We're recording on Thursday, and I hadn't left my apartment since Sunday.
So I'm glad we got you out of your apartment. Thank you for showering
I haven't
before you
left the
came.
house since Sunday either.
Really?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
you said you have people that you can dispatch to walk the dog.
Yes.
See, I don't have that.
I did-
Ellen and I have to.
I did walk the dog to the end of the driveway one day.
Well, that was
kind.
very
And I was
brave
like-
of you.
Thoughtful.
You're like,
We have a
I'm done
fenced
with
in
that.
yard. I just
Me
let
too.
it out.
We do too. Ours love it, man. They've been
Yeah,
like
ours
playing in
too.
it like crazy. Yeah.
Our dog does not know, let's just say, how to do business in the snow. So held it for
Business.
like days.
Oh my
no.
gosh.
Kid you not. And we're like, you got to
Eventually,
figure this out.
Eventually,
That's
it's
like
good.
the people who don't like to do that anywhere but home.
Yeah, that was
Like-
all my kids.
Yeah,
growing
that's
up.
everyone
Yeah.
in my family
Yeah,
too.
they're
Like
like-
they just won't go anywhere
Yeah.
except for home.
Well, me neither.
Oh, yeah.
We know
Easy
that
if
that's
you know
not
Thanks,
me.
true.
Sam,
Yeah,
thanks,
yeah,
Sam,
yeah,
for
yeah.
that. Yeah. Lightning is about to strike Sam. Yes. So, growing up, I know, Suzie, you grew up in California.
Yes,
And,
I did.
well, you spent a little time in England.
I did.
They have snow in England.
Yes.
Do you remember it? As,
I actually do have a memory of one memory of there being snowfall. Yes, but it wasn't like a lot. Like I don't. I was outside in
Yeah.
the park, so
oh, okay.
I wasn't.
snowflake.
I didn't have to stay home.
Okay. Nice. So, did they do sledding and all that stuff over there?
I imagine they did, but I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
I had parents that handled me very gingerly.
Oh,
So-
I did not.
Yeah, I know.
did
Nor
not.
did I.
I had the
No.
total opposite of your experience
Yes.
when it comes to that.
Yes.
part.
I had, some people say they had helicopter parents. Some people have snowplow parents.
Yeah.
We have kids' parents?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
And why are they in our house still? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, my parents were like similar, but they had weird rules that didn't line up.
Right.
Like I could go roam free.
Oh, for sure.
But I had to be in bed before 8 o'clock when I was in middle school, which makes no sense because all the kids were watching Welcome Back, Kotter, and
Yeah.
they were
Oh.
talking about it, and I had to be like,
I
I've never even seen it.
Oh.
So it was very weird.
I feel bad for you.
My
Yeah, me
parents
too.
were kind of like that too. Like
Yeah.
weird rules and they would kind of change too.
Right.
Was that how yours were?
Very arbitrary,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
weird,
very
and
arbitrary.
that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My parents were pretty strict about stuff too, like curfews and things like that.
Yeah.
But I was allowed to watch Dallas and Dynasty when I
See,
was
yeah.
little.
Dallas
Yeah.
and Dynasty.
Like
not-
I remember being like 7 years old and watching those shows.
Here's
Yeah.
how inconsistent my parents were with
Who
this.
shot JR?
They would
Yeah.
let me
I messed
buy
that up in Dallas.
albums. I could buy albums, whatever I wanted. So I would
Yeah.
listen to George Carlin's 7
Bad
Dirty Words You Can't Say on Television
Yeah.
and other things like that. But
Yes, I love
but
that album, by the
couldn't
way.
watch Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yeah.
That makes no
Yeah.
sense.
Pretty random.
Who?
Were you allowed to watch MASH?
It was on too late,
Oh.
right? Now, when I got older, yes. I think this was more about not like we don't want you to stay up as much as we want to have you in bed and
Right.
wait, like so we can just
Our time
Yeah.
kind of a
be
thing.
done
Yeah,
with,
yeah,
with
yeah.
having kids.
You had a brother. You
Yeah.
still do have a
Yeah,
brother.
still
Was
do.
he older or younger?
Younger, 4 years.
Okay, so
We're in the same bucket. Yeah.
they did the same. See, the beauty of being the youngest of four is that I just inherited everybody else's bedtime, everybody else's curfew. So they didn't want to keep track of more than one time. So if my older siblings had a midnight curfew, I had a midnight curfew when I was in like 7th grade.
Yeah.
And I'd
That's
show up at
hilarious.
home at 10 o'clock, and they'd be like, "What are you doing here?" Well, all my friends had to go home, so
Guess I'm coming home.
I
too.
guess I'm going home. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't think about
Well,
that."
Suzie and I are in that real time right now, I
Yeah.
think. At least we are with Rocky, our youngest. Like,
Yeah.
we had a conversation about this yesterday. Like, Honor, our daughter, was like, "Dad, like, Rocky's spoiled." And we're like, well, we spoiled you as much as we could, you know.
right.
But it was just all these, you know, as it trickles down, the older, it feels more unfair.
We have way more chill and a little bit more money.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yep.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Harder.
That's exactly right. I'm like, we just spoil Rocky differently.
Yeah.
They're like, way better. I'm like, well, okay. Well, you know, whatever.
Right, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, my kids said the same thing, but I was like, no.
Yeah.
No, we treated you the same. No, you didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
We definitely do not treat our kids the same. I am sad to say.
Well, could have been worse.
It could have.
So, any good snow stories for you, Dave?
Well, I grew up in Virginia Beach, so not a lot of snow growing up. But as an adult, all kinds of snow stories. And I will tell you, I have skidded off the road at least twice, or been in a car that skidded off. I was trying to think about it on the way here because I almost did it again. But I think it's 3 times, maybe twice. And once where it was in Pennsylvania, where I spun backwards, bounced off the guardrail, came across into oncoming traffic.
Oh, no.
I was facing the traffic.
Yeah.
Right.
What were you driving? That's what's most important.
Oh man, it was like a little Datsun.
Oh yeah, those will kill you.
It was it was death trap.
Yeah.
Oh no.
B210.
Another time I was in a little I guess it was.
You don't drive big cars, do you?
No, but I was with some college friends, and for whatever reason, they decided it was a smart idea to take the secondary roads when it snowed.
Yeah.
And the car just went zinc into the ditch, and we were facing straight up like a rocket ship.
Oh no.
Like the front of the car was facing the sky.
That's fun.
I'm guessing you didn't get out of that.
We did.
Oh, you did?
Weirdly, we did.
Wow.
We figured it out.
Okay.
Well, yeah, enough
Without
college
a tow
students.
truck,
You get
or?
enough college students
That's
that have had
impressive.
enough to drink. You can get out of anything.
Yeah, that's true. Fair enough. Touche.
That's
All
right.
All right.
Yeah, but I've got all things like that. That is like a lot of snow catastrophes. That happen.
Yeah. As a child, I lived in northern Minnesota, so snow was a regular part of my life from Halloween through April. So
that's about half the year, Kev.
Oh, it's a little more
So
than
do you
that.
get really annoyed at people here?
Yes, I do. And I try not to, because I go, hey, this is, and we were driving around the other night, Lori and I, and I'm like, this is like normal.
Yeah.
This is like, but 1 year it snowed so much that we lived in a ranch house, 1 story. Mm-hmm. Everybody pretty much in northern Minnesota, it's easier to heat. And the snow had gotten so high that we had to shovel off the roof. And then when we got done shoveling off the roof, you couldn't, it filled the, so we could slide off of the roof because
it made a perfect.
It did. It made a perfect hill. So that winter, our hill was our house.
That's awesome.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had such a good time with that. My dad was very irritated when he found out that we were walking all over the roof all winter
with all that snow.
But it was perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was so fun.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good memory.
Well, this one, I don't know if this would be. It's a good memory now, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
So right after I graduated high school, I took a year before I went to college. And one of my jobs that year, I was a cook at McDonald's.
Oh.
And I had to do
I like the word cook.
Or whatever you call it. Whatever you want to call it.
Whatever
Whatever
you're a chef.
I warmed up the food at
Let's
McDonald's.
Let's go with chef.
I unfroze the patties.
Nice.
But I had to be there like early. Like I think openers had to be there like 3:30.
In the morning?
In the morning.
Really?
Yeah, because it was, I think we opened at 4.
Nightmare.
When you were 18?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, man, I was going to bed at 3:30.
Well,
That'll make you want to go to college.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I had enough bad jobs that year that I'm like, I think or at least that, I didn't love. But so I was so tired one morning. I woke and it had snowed. We had a blizzard. And I grew up in Indiana, so in the Midwest again, snow's not that abnormal. And they know how to clear the roads there and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of snow, and I was so tired. I'm like, I do not want to go in. So I literally I drove my car into a field. Like I wrecked it on purpose.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't like no insurance, nothing. I just drove it so I could honestly tell them, guys, I went off the road. I can't come in. I didn't want to lie, but
wow.
So I created a truth in that moment, Yeah.
Man, I've delivered pizzas in snowstorms.
Yeah.
That's a blast. You get the best tips,
dude,
in snowstorms. It's so good.
Journey, my oldest, his buddy from Chicago came down during this, and he's a DoorDash. He DoorDashes.
Yeah.
And so he DoorDashed while he was here because he drives in Chicago, and nobody wanted out, and they were paying really well for DoorDash. So that kid raked in the dollars this week, man.
Yeah.
So
I had a Jeep, so I was like delivering pizza. I could go anywhere. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
It is amazing, though, when people who've grown up in snow, you're with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we went to Denver to visit some friends, and it was a snowstorm like this one.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was nothing.
Yep.
They were driving 50 miles an hour.
Yep.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were. I mean, we had a little chalet up in the Rockies. It's like snow everywhere. You can't see. They're just plowing
Zooming
through the
down the
thing.
mountain.
Not one bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
No. Like just doing it.
It becomes
such
normal.
a different world than here, where people are
No clue.
disaster.
No
Yeah.
clue. Saw a guy yesterday. I was out trying to get through the intersection of Nolensville Pike and Old Hickory.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of an incline. He's driving one of these Scion TCs. It's a rear-wheel drive. It's got wide tires on it. He's just spinning around in circles, and everybody on the road is just getting away from him. So the light turns red. I pull up next to him, roll down the window, and he rolls down the window. What? He's like 16. I'm like, if you stop spinning your wheels, you will get somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, how do you? I'm like, dude, just gentle
Ease
and
into it.
slow,
Yeah.
and you'll get out of here. Because I think he had been there all day, like literally just spinning in a circle.
Life
Wow.
wisdom
Right.
from Kevin
Yeah.
Dixon.
Right.
Yeah, I felt bad for him.
Deep thoughts.
He got out though, right?
He did. He followed me through. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yep. So that was good. So let's, we kind of hinted at our conversation early on. We were talking about our parents. All of us have them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about the psychology of aging today, and how we go through that and what happens to us, and a little bit of the church really does play a role in this in many ways. Spiritual life does in helping people age well, or not actually, because community does play a big role in how well people age. So, Dave, do you have some starters for us?
I do, but before I get into this, I'd love to just hear, have people that are listening hear our current situations, like if you don't mind saying,
Yeah.
like what
For us
the
personally.
ages of your parents and their kind of current situation and all that. Do you feel good about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. So I lost my mom in 2005 to inflammatory breast cancer. She was 54. So, she right kind of in that prime is when she passed. And then I lost my father in 2019 to Parkinson's and congestive heart failure and renal failure. So there was a lot going on there.
Yep.
But he had early onset Parkinson's. He was in his early 50s, and he died when he was 69. So he had that. And so my wife's father died the year just about 4 or 5 months after my dad from Parkinson's as well. So yeah. So we only, between Angela and I, we have one parent that's alive.
One living parent.
Yeah.
My mom passed away in 2020 at the age of 74 after she had multiple sclerosis, probably like over 40 years of that.
Wow.
So I was 5 when she was diagnosed. So yeah, long time of living with that. My dad is alive. He lives out of the country. He's 78 years old. And he's a handful.
And in another country.
And in another country.
That's a good combination.
Yes. And my dad was diagnosed with early onset dementia when he was 69. He died when he was 74. That was in 2012. That was an interesting stretch of time. My mom is currently living. She's 86 and she came to visit me. This is probably what set us down this path. Is she came to visit me. She lives with my sister in West Virginia, but my sister was going on a trip, so I watched her. And she's been in and out of the hospital since she's been here. She's currently in a rehab. She has congestive heart failure. She has renal failure. She is wasting away in many ways. She just is really, but she's cognitively all there and lets you know what life's about. My wife's mother is still living. She's 93, lives alone, still drives. So, and then her dad died in 2000. He was 80 years old when he died.
Wow.
There was a big gap in ages.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he died of, no, I won't say. He just it doesn't matter how he died.
Okay.
Yeah. He died at a casino, so we'll just leave it at that.
There's a story there.
There is.
It's another podcast.
Yes.
Different show, right?
Yeah. My dad died 2 years ago after a long, protracted struggle where he had a series of strokes, and then he had vascular dementia. And so he was just, he couldn't care for himself. He stayed at home. My mom was his primary caretaker.
Yeah.
So he died a couple years ago. But that was probably, 4 years in the making, something like that. My mom's still alive. She's early 80s, mentally sharp, but is having some, kind of lots of physical.
Yeah.
Is just breaking down physically. Ellen's dad died about 6-7 years ago. I'll tell you a real quick story about him in a second. He died of congestive heart failure, and her mom is 80. Gosh, I want to say 85. She might be like 87 now.
Wow.
And just like the most with it, spry,
I believe
cool
that.
person. Like,
Yeah.
what if you know Ellen? It's who you would imagine Ellen's mom to be.
That's what I was picturing.
Yeah, and she's like one of my all-time favorite people.
Is she the one who said that you need to be a good friend to yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's awesome.
That stayed with me. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That she said that she wasn't lonely after her husband died or sad because she was a friend to herself and she felt like she could be company for herself and feel okay with who she was. So
That's awesome.
Good wisdom.
my father-in-law was a different breed of cat. And I won't get too far into this, but he was an Army major, career military guy, retired after 20 years at age 40 in the mountains of North Carolina, was a Christmas tree farmer.
Wow.
And was just a former Army major guy. And my favorite story with him ever, I told this a lot of times, is he's working the Christmas tree farm and he has the misfortune of having me as a son-in-law who's like completely worthless. So we're up there for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And my brother, who's not related to him, is out there working the Christmas tree farm, cutting down trees, and I'm inside playing Xbox. And I hear the chainsaw going, and all of a sudden it stops, and then the screen door opens to the house, and his pants leg is cut open and gushing blood.
Oh, no.
And he says, "The first time I cut my leg with a dang chainsaw." And he marches down the hall, and 10 minutes later comes out with another pair of jeans, out the door, fires up the chainsaw. And I was thinking, if that happened to me, I'd never get over it.
I'd lay there.
I'd never get over it. If I cut my leg open with a chainsaw, it would define every moment, every
That's right.
conversation.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't think about it.
For a minute.
A week later, he wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah.
So he was just a different
That's
guy.
amazing.
And he had a, congestive heart failure and all this stuff, but he was just a tough bird. But
Wow.
so we're in different situations with our parents and with other relatives. And
Well,
all
I
that.
didn't talk about my in-laws. You guys all talked about your
go.
in-laws. My in-laws are great. They really are. They're 77, but my father-in-law has had cancer. He's actually had 3 different types of cancer.
Wow.
And this latest one he's had since, I think 2011 or 12. Wow. So, and he is a powerful human being.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
I know. This is, we'll see if this ever happens. But when people get cancer and they're like, he's so courageous and his courageous battle with cancer, that's not what they're going to say about me if I get cancer.
Yeah,
They're gonna be, Dave is like whining, complaining, miserable to be like, I am not going to be.
You're not a good patient.
No, I'm going to be terrible at it. So
I've already decided I'm not getting cancer, so that's
good.
That's
That's a
the
good
route. That's the
plan.
route I'm going.
good for you, Kevin.
Thanks.
Why didn't we think of that?
I know it's a good idea.
Yeah, you like that one?
I do.
So we're kind of imagining this or fashioning this conversation as 2 parts. One where we're talking about the perspective of the aging person.
Yes.
And the other where we're talking about the perspective of people who are caring for and love the aging person.
Right.
So I just want to throw out a couple things that we can bounce off of about the perspective of the aging person and some of the psychology of that.
Yeah.
And I, as I looked over research and studied the what's out there, really came down to 5 things I want to share. They're all
Just
interlocking.
I'm getting close to experiencing this psychology, so I'm going to take notes on.
You mean you personally?
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
Here it comes, Kevin.
yeah, here it comes. Thank you.
Oh, I know. This is the weird thing about
I
being
am older
our
than
age.
you. Yes.
Not by much.
Not by much, but I'll take the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is strange when you're like in your head, you mentally represent yourself as like, oh, I'm 30 years old.
Yes.
Right.
And you're
Yes.
like, oh, I can't walk with my left
Yep.
leg for some inexplicable reason because
Yeah.
like all these aches and pains and all this stuff.
So dumb.
Very weird.
Yeah.
So here are the things that I'll just put out there. They're interlocking, they're related things, but why don't I put them out there first, and then we'll kind of pick back through them.
Great.
So the first thing that relates to the psychology of aging is that there are issues of identity and self-perception. So someone gets old, they maybe have retired, and a lot of who they are has been tied to what they've done,
Yep.
and now they've lost that.
Yeah.
And it's, what am I about now? Maybe their role was as a parent, and now their kids are grown and their grandchildren are away from them.
Yeah.
All the things that they had as part of their, this is my role in life, might have been just taken away from them.
Yeah.
Or that they've given up. So that's a biggie.
Yep.
The second is the social connections. You get older and you retire, so you don't have your work people. Your friends begin to get infirm or they die.
Yeah.
Then you can't get around as much. And so all of a sudden, the social connectedness begins to dry up. The third is cognitive changes. So you start to have anywhere from mild memory issues, which, believe me, I'm way past that already, to full-on dementia and all the things that go with that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's actually really complex. That's a whole conversation in itself of like the different kinds of memory and how that affects people in different ways. So I'll give you one example of that. And I'm not trying to make this about me, but what I've noticed is I'm starting to see some problems with what's called prospective memory, which is remembering to remember. Right. So if I'm like, oh, I need to do blank, unless I write it down, or unless I don't remember to remember the thing.
Yep.
Now, if someone says, did you call so-and-so? I'll remember that I was supposed to. So it wasn't that it's not in my head, but that's kind of an early thing that happens with some people with aging and all that.
Yeah.
We're going downhill.
I know. I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, wait a minute, that's me.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Yeah. And some of that can be just being very busy and stationed in life. Some of it can be stressed out. Some of that can be just temporary.
I always said there's just so much in there
Yeah.
that it doesn't have any more room to hold
For sure.
anymore.
That's definitely what it
Your
is.
brain is just
Definitely.
so
That's it.
Oh, you don't
That's
believe
it.
it?
It's so big and full.
Fair. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
That's right.
yeah. That's what we think of it with Sam. We're like Sam with his big and full brain.
Yeah, just don't have any more room.
I actually do think that about
I
you.
want.
I really do.
I've seen with my mother. She's losing her eyesight. She has
Cataracts.
no, that she got a bunch.
Macular
Macular-
That's it.
degeneration.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I was going to say that, and I thought, man, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
I remember to remember, but it has affected all kinds of things in her life, like what she can read, what she can do, whether she can navigate a dark room or a shadowy room. It's
all of it.
It's hard.
Changed everything for her.
My grandpa had that.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
My grandma's literally experiencing that right now as she's in a nursing home. She's 92, and kind of a lot of what we're, if you guys are even describing, I'm like, that's kind of where grandma is right now.
Yeah.
That's genetic too, so it might be coming for us.
I know. I go. I try, and I'm due to go to I hate going to the eye doctor, but I'm going to go.
Attaboy.
I got to keep.
Attaboy.
Keep those eyes going. Yeah.
The last two are very related to each other, and they both have to do with sort of the emotional side of this. I didn't even put down the obvious physical pieces of it, except that what we're acknowledging is that, your eyesight, you're
hearing,
able to get around,
the
you're
whole
hearing
thing,
all that stuff. But grief and loss. So loss of your own functioning, loss of people that are your peers and close with you, loss of your own independence.
Right.
And then it's also a time of greater anxiety and depression for a lot of people, right? Because all of a sudden you've got your own health concerns. You're thinking about your own mortality in very real ways. There are financial worries for a lot of people and how they're going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So from the perspective of the older person, this is the psychology of the things that change in big ways. And so I know we want to have conversation next about like how those of us who are
experiencing it from the outside,
right, who are caring for them or loving these people, But from their perspective, this is a time of life where a lot of things are changing.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say that then we can bounce off of this is there is a whole study of different phases of life, developmental stages. Those of you who've ever taken a developmental psychology class, this is Eric Erickson's psychosocial stages.
Yeah.
So you think about when you're a infant, it's trust versus mistrust, and then all the way up when you're a teenager, it's what's my role and what's my identity versus I haven't figured that out. All these stages. The last stage of development is in this older time, obviously, and it's called integrity versus despair. And what that means is if you hit this point when you're older, you've gone through life, you're either going to be at a place where you're like, I am at peace with myself. I'm good with this person I've become, or not.
Yeah.
I'll use my mother-in-law as an example. You already referred to it. The picture of that is a person who has personal, we call it sometimes ego integrity, but just integrity. It's like, I'm good. I am a friend to myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you also see older people that are just more angry and resentful and more difficult to be around and all that. And that is usually kind of a slow train coming. Usually it's things have gotten to this point that when they're older, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, I feel like I've observed that in some people that, like, which is true of all of us. Like, they become more of who they were, because you lose all the filters too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like everything that's in your head that you had the filter to keep to yourself, you're no longer.
Goes away.
Yeah.
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 And I can feel that in myself. Like I feel generally good about myself, but I also, you can feel the little pull toward some of the, like, being grumpy old man kind of. I was at a doctor's office and the elevator, there's 2 elevators.
Yeah.
It's a 3-story building.
Yeah.
And there's this old man going, well, why don't they have one elevator going up and one going down? And why don't they? His complaint is just sitting there, just ranting about the
Griping about it
elevator,
all.
which, by the way, makes no sense to have one elevator that only goes
Right.
up.
Right.
It's like, what does it go through the
Yeah,
middle of
is
the
there a
earth?
loop
I don't know how
here?
that works, but
Only one goes down.
right. But he was just going off
I'm
about
screwed.
it. And these people are there, with their kids, and they're all kind of like, and I'm like, man, I told Ellen, I'm like, I do not want to be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But you can feel that, like, you get to a certain point.
Sure.
Like in our, I think I've said this here. When we moved to Nashville, we said we're not going to do home
Ownership
We're
anymore,
going,
right.
We're going to an apartment. We have an apartment, and during the snow, the kids are just rollerblading down the halls and yelling and screaming. And there's a part of me that wants to be out there, like, get off my property, right? So you can feel it kind of pull toward that, but right, they're definitely, when people get older, like Susie's saying. The filters come down, and then they become a more heightened or pronounced version of themselves.
Yeah.
When my dad got dementia, that came out.
Yeah.
So
I saw
it was
a
funny.
lot of what you were just talking about in my dad through his,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And my grandma passed away earlier in 2023, and she was 99.
Yeah.
And she had some dementia too because of her age, and she outlived 3 of 5 children that she bore and her husband. But man, like, I've actually been thinking about this lately, in that I want to age like she aged, because she was always, the older she got, the kinder she got, and the more softened she became. And, when she was completely dependent on other people, she didn't complain. And here she took care of everyone, her kids, her grandkids, other people's kids. And she just never, when she wasn't able to do those things, she didn't turn into a bitter person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's less about the circumstances and just about their core person they become.
Do you ever, because I'm just thinking about, like, my dad, and I definitely, what we were describing happened, right? That kind of, that filters go away, and kind of, and I know with Parkinson's there can be at times, aspects of dementia that play into that. But, like, I also saw kind of the other side of that happen as he got closer to the end, which was almost a peace with, like, it went from that kind of fighting it to just a release or a peace, and
Absolutely,
and to that integrity kind of place that you're talking about. Is that common, uncommon? Does that?
No, I think it can be very common.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not an expert on aging. I tend to work with the other side of the continuum, but from what I understand, you can definitely have a period where you're fighting, and in a sense, that's more of it's like I'm fighting for something rather than I'm just becoming a grumpy old guy.
Sure. Yeah.
Or it could be a symptom of things that are going on cognitively for you.
Right.
Sure.
But it's interesting to get a glimpse at that point where, like, are they at peace with themselves?
Yeah.
Like Suzie was saying, my mother-in-law, Manon, who I already described, awesome. Her sister is in her early 90s, has Alzheimer's, and yet is the most, like, the two of them together, they're just the most delightful, cheerful people. Can't remember anything. Doesn't like emails the same thing like within the same hour, all this stuff, but just like laughs and good. It just enjoys conversation, being with people. It's that kind of very cheerful, delightful person. By the way, this is fascinating. I'll tell you, she developed a thing I'd never heard of before. I didn't think it was real. I looked it up. It's a real thing. So she has, this is my mother-in-law's sister. Okay. 90 something years old. She says, I've got some boarders who live downstairs in the basement, which she does. And you know what? They play hymns of the faith night and day. And it's just so sweet. It reminds me of, what I grew up with, and night and day. Sometimes it keeps me up, but night and day. And I'm like, really? And so when her daughter came over, she goes, come over, stand over here. You can hear it. And she stood over there and she's like, oh no, she's not hearing anything. There's a thing called musical ear syndrome.
Oh, I want that.
Yeah. Where like songs that you have had in your head, just like almost in a hallucinating kind of way.
That's so cool.
And so she hears it like it's a thing.
Yeah.
Like she's not a match.
Like it's real for her.
She's hearing the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I feel like we need to have another episode on what music you would hear if you had.
Well, I know what I would hear.
That might be a good conversation. That's a good one.
For sure. I know what I'd hear.
Me
but,
too. Yeah.
But you think about, like, that's not, who would ever expect that?
Yeah, that's
right.
I've
so
never heard
cool,
of that.
though.
Wow.
Yeah.
And especially for her that it's hymns, like I can't help to think like how sweet of God to give her that.
Yeah. Just the hymns of the faith. Yeah. They're so sweet.
That's
Sometimes
so cool.
it keeps me up at night, but they just like to,
That's cool.
Yeah. In my first church out in rural Pennsylvania, we would go to people's houses with shut-ins and do communion with them.
Yeah.
And there was a sweet, very sweet old lady. She was in her 90s. And we would get there every month. We would, walk in, and she'd be so happy to see us. She would have food out and all kinds of stuff. The last time we went, she'd gotten disoriented a little bit. And so the cookies, she had just taken them out of the freezer, so they were frozen. The coffee was cold, and the house looked like, like she hadn't been caring for it. And we said, hey, can we call your sister or your daughter or somebody, because something doesn't seem right? She goes, yeah, you probably should, because I think I'm going to die tonight.
Oh, wow.
But I'm so glad you came to send me on my way, and we'll have communion together. So we sat with her, prayed with her. This was before cell phones. So Phil and I left the house, and he said, we need to call him. I said, yeah. So we went and called him, and when they got over there, she died.
No.
Wow.
No way.
Wow.
She had died. She
Wow.
called it.
She knew it.
She called it.
Wow. That's
it was like
amazing.
Babe Ruth, man. She was like pointing like that.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah, no kidding. And she was at peace with it.
Yeah, oh yeah. She was not like, she was like, this is so sweet of you guys to come over.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, when you talk about how people, they can be really grumpy and hard and not at peace. And then you see, having pastored for a time, you see the process some people go through where there's a lot of unrest, and then they find arrest. And like, your mom has kind of gone through that.
Yeah,
like
fear.
Several
A lot of
months
fear.
ago, you would sit with her because she was very afraid.
Yeah.
And then more recently, she's told you that she's not
she's
afraid.
ready. She's
like,
at peace with it.
Like Steve's grandpa, I remember Steve's grandpa before he passed away. And then this other woman at my old church, Betty Warnholtz. I mean,
There's a name.
Yeah, totally. But Betty specifically, like she would tell me that she was afraid that she wasn't gonna be with Jesus,
right?
You know, and I was like, I would sit there and think, if you're not gonna be with Jesus, we're all
screwed. Right? Yeah.
And Steve's grandpa too,
it,
like he was so confident in his faith, but like he also, shared a lot of like angsty regret that he had.
Sure.
But then they get to a place where, and not everybody experiences this, obviously, but a lot of people, we see the progression towards, and my mom was the same way, where they feel ready and at peace. And so where does the psychological and spiritual collide in that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been with people a lot of times when they've died. So have you, Sammy.
Yeah.
And I've been with people that fight it right up to the last second, and they're on a ventilator and they are trying to breathe as hard as they can. Yeah. And you can see the fight. And they do not want to leave. And then I've been with people where they go, just, I'm good.
Tonight's my night.
Or they need their loved one to say, it's okay for you to go.
Yeah.
I've seen that often.
Yeah.
Where it's almost
okay.
a release.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Like my dad was one of those guys that fought it. Like, I mean, every step of the way fought everything.
Do whatever you can.
Yes. Yeah. And I do remember, the last probably couple months before he passed, he finally was at a place of, I think I'm ready. Yeah. And so to hear, I mean, because, this is 15, 16 years of battling this disease that he knew was going to end, in him dying.
I remember those. I remember you saying that he's come to peace.
Yeah, it was like, I was shocked. I was grateful, but I was really blown away that, so something shifted in there, and I don't know what that was. Yeah.
And on the psychological side, this might be helpful, is I think we need to make a distinction between circumstance and core personality too.
Sure. Yeah.
Because all of us can go through times that are hard. We're stressed out. Could be during times when your kids are just really demanding or difficult, or it could be other times where there's financial, and we feel angry and anxious and all that.
Right.
But that might be different than our core personality. And what we're really talking about is there's sometimes when people, when they're older, get to a place where they're scared. Yeah. They're worried about something. Yeah. But we're also talking about what is someone's really the essence of their personality, and when does that shine through?
Right.
And sometimes when they get over through the side of, okay, I'm not fighting, I'm not scared anymore. Yep. And then you can see that person at rest and at peace and at a good place.
Kind of who they truly are in that sense. Yeah.
So
is there anything we can do to help people with that, or is it just being present with them?
I think the hope that I have with this conversation is just building empathy about this, right? Especially those of us in this role, it's easy sometimes to get just frustrated.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I think we all probably experience
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I have a lot more empathy for my mom now that she's gone than I did.
Same.
Sure.
When she was alive.
Yeah.
Same with my dad.
So I think.
Wow.
Which sucks, kind of.
I know.
I'm trying to have empathy.
Right. And that's. And I think our next conversation is going to be what's the not only impact for us, but also what do we do practically?
So as an aging person goes through this, right? And I've watched this with a number of people. I've been there, watched it. We all have. There is this. How do we as church? How do we as people, humans, to understand their plight, because it's all of our plights. It's all of us are, unless you die young, to enter into it in a meaningful way, spiritually and just as humans. That's been the struggle. Like when I go to it, like I've been to a number of nursing homes, I've done a number of services at nursing homes, I've talked to a lot of old people, and yet I find myself still at a little bit of a loss to identify with their place.
Yeah. Let's pick that up.
Okay.
That's a good break for us to pick up what our part of this is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We will pick that up on our next Journey on My Mind. Thanks, guys.